everybody loves color, but people are really afraid to commit to it. It's a language without words, it's a universal language. So it's very easy to reach signs and signals and emotions to people through color. Uh, so I found that a very powerful element in work, whether it's been work for other brands or work for our own Freedom Tree home brand. That just the R factor that you can create with color makes people want to be in that space and brings infinite joy and calm. So that's the strength of color.
Hi, Latika. Welcome to POWERPUFF Women, our new talk show featuring the real and raw stories of inspiring women leaders like you.
Hi, Monica. It's wonderful to make a connect back. Wonderful surprise to get your message, and here we are.
Thank you so much. It's been almost like more than a decade since we met last, and now here we are, you know, in different zones of our lives and discussing, and it's phenomenal to kind of have this conversation. I've always looked at you as an inspiration, while I've been a marketing person, but design was something that interested me. And when I used to have interesting conversations around design with you, it opened another dimension in me as a marketer. So I think I'm so grateful and thankful that we met and I could have those interesting design conversations with you.
Thank you for that. And you were an amazing client. So to think that you were a client once, and here we are today talking about our work in different fields, different time zones, different spaces.
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much for taking out time and sharing your incredible stories with us. So Latika, one word that defines you.
Okay, I'd love to say this. I like to define myself as the colorful, spelled with a double O.
Okay.
I've made a career out of color trends, projecting trend and design futures for companies. But I just feel that it's such a transformative power of color, and I don't take this seriously myself personally. So I just like to describe myself as the colorful. I will do anything and not be embarrassed by color.
Lovely. Why do you think, the importance of color is there in our lives? What is so important about colors in our lives? So could you just discuss something about that too?
Yeah, so Monica, I've noticed throughout my career, everybody loves color. Now, whether it be automotive companies that we may have done for or home brands, everybody loves color, but people are really afraid to commit to it. So, everybody loves color, so that's easy to work with. The second thing that happens is that it's a language without words, it's a universal language. So, it's very easy to reach signs and signals and emotions to people through color. So I found that a very powerful element in work, whether it's been work for other brands or work for our own Freedom Tree home brand. That just the R factor that you can create with color makes people want to be in that space and brings infinite joy and calm. So that's the strength of color.
I agree. When we look at cool colors, warm colors, different colors have different energies, and this is how colors inspire. Lovely. So, you being a woman, right? How did you decide to take up a course at NID? Because NID, like, when did you do your what was the year when it's like, it looks like as if you are one of those very few females in India who took up this decision and decided to go ahead with a design course at NID.
So, let me reveal my age now. I'm a vintage NITian, okay? Which means my batch passed out of NIT 42 to 43 years ago.
Imagine.
So imagine, right? So very often I get clients like you also who would say, Latika, we were in shorts or in school when you was. I think it was more that there was almost no knowledge about this institute. There was only one in Ahmedabad. And we were very lucky that we came to know about it. My family was good old government servants in the railways. We were based out of Bombay. My dad was looking after Western region for the railways. And we just chanced upon this institute that could help professionalize what was considered 40-45 years ago. Somebody saying, बहुत creative है, बहुत अच्छी drawing करती है, अभी इसको art school में डाल दो. My main thing was not to do art because that's it's a very beautiful, self-fulfilling profession.
Hmm.
Hugely on the fringe, huge social commentary. I wanted to see how I could convert whatever talent people were spotting into use for others. And that's what design does. You approach it with a sense of being able to solve issues that exist. And that was my keenest interest. So, we had a great balance. In fact, NID is amazing because it's always had a great balance of women and men. And it was a design institute. And things may be different now if you see the plethora of design institutes where, people are pushed into doing design because they're considered creative. I actually think an engineer's work is very creative. I think a scientist's work is closest to what designers do. So when you get stuck for questions on design, being a marketer, we can talk about science also.
I know. And I'm an engineer too, so you can talk about engineering also.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, right. Absolutely. So, when you completed your design course and then you thought of starting, so could you just share your milestones? Like, how did you take up your career forward? What did you decide? What were the things happening in your mind as a woman also? Because obviously India was a different country altogether then, and in considering the opportunities that you would get in design, like that's also a different discussion here. So could you just tell us, like, what were the thoughts going on in your mind as a female, as a woman?
Yeah, so it's so interesting that you've asked me about what was it like to be a female designer at that time.
Yes.
So design was an unknown profession. If you joined as a female, and I'm going to first step back a little bit and just talk about how encouraging my parents were to believe that I could do this as a profession.
Okay.
Right? Very open-minded father who'd done his engineering actually from very reputable institutes.
Right.
And the fact that you could now use design as a profession, not even, again, at that stage, I would say, forget man or woman, design was an unknown profession at the end of the 70s. That you could professionally be trained in this was an unknown idea. So we were almost, the few, 10, 15th year batches into the Design Institute. So I think cumulatively, both the men and the women had to struggle to establish what they could do as designers. Now, women faced a different thing. Like my dad was very sure that you have to work, right? He wanted us to professionalize and be in a working situation. And there was also the conversation which is a life conversation, that you may have to adjust to whoever you may subsequently get married to and move around with them, so your career may not be smooth. So how are you going to make a career path like that? And
Absolutely.
having lived with a family that was in the railways where we moved every 2 to 3 years, I was only too aware that you may not have a continuity of career in one location or place and not be able to make your equity or set down roots. That's just, sort of the upbringing and the time that we were in. The second thing that happens is that because, like I said, nobody knew what design was, as a woman, if you walked in, people would say, okay, so madam, you do salwar kameez design. What sort of it's impossible to imagine that today, right?
Right.
So at the end of 79 or 1980, when we set out to work, we had to battle that because it was not even fashion design. The mental picture was what is newest in the country that is not a sari, you will design salwar kameez. That was a notion of design, very, very, very closely associated with pattern or fashion. I would say that I think my first learnings, and this was, I wanted to pursue within design a profession in color and
Okay.
specialization in color.
Okay.
So now imagine that double whammy. Nobody recognizes that they design. Now you want to specialize in something that is color. So, Monica, for the first few years, apart from, yes, taking on some projects where I could earn something, I literally interned or worked with people where I could learn about color and the power and influence about color, whether it was architecture, whether it was in graphic design, whether it was in the arts and crafts. So I took on projects I'm not talking 15-day projects or 2 month projects. I'm talking about half a year, 1 year.
Understood.
You don't understand the industry unless you can spend that much time.
Agree.
So one of my first things straight out of design school was to work with Charles Correa, the architect.
Okay. Okay.
Say, how do I, because he was using he was open to using amazing colors in his architecture. So it was literally like an internship project for 6 to 8 months where New Vashi, Mumbai was being constructed, new housing. And I worked with him and had to go.
Okay.
Likewise, a very famous graphic designer and advertising man, worked with them to create something. These were like year-long, almost learning projects, even after I passed out of NIT. And so I got a sense of spatial design because I graduated in exhibition design. So, that's why architecture, that's why communication, that's why art and exhibits. And I chose these people because I could learn more about color from them. And if I could earn from that, I was very happy. So the first few years went in that. I even was bold enough to go to one of India's most upcoming and powerfully growing companies and say, what can I do with you on color? People are quite amazed now when they hear about it, that you can walk into a company or you can pick up the phone and ask to speak to the marketing manager. And as a student or just somebody right out of college, 1 or 2 years out, be able to tell them that I would like to work with you. How may I work with you? For the longest time, I would say until the new millennium, there was almost no designation for designers in corporate life or in more organized. They had to figure out कि आपको marketing में डालें, कि आपको production का ranking में डालें. So I was not engaged with people full time. But I know that other people that we recommended to help build their capabilities in design, they would always wonder कि there was no department where designers could fit in. So that's the journey also that's happened, right? And today it's unimaginable that a company could work without design inputs. They understood advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Advertising is communication about your product. Design is the
Absolutely.
creation of the product and experience for your customer. So
Mm-hmm.
there was an understanding about how to talk about our product, but there was no understanding about design for a long time.
I know. Isn't it incredible? A journey which is full of these interesting, small little stories. If we look at your graph, all right now, it might look like this, but then as we, zoom it, and then we'll see these
Yes.
crests and troughs where
Yes.
those highs and lows happening,
Yeah.
and every day you would be thinking, have I taken the right decision, am I on the right path, especially when imagine you are you're working in an organization, but still you don't have a defined role in an organization, a permanent role in an organization. Isn't it so challenging? And at the same time, you need that kind of conviction, that passion. Yes, this is what I want. Something
Yes.
here that you would like to add. What kept you going? It's I think it was your passion, or it was your conviction that kept you going. Could you just tell something, that one thing that kept you going? I know you said that, color, you wanted to make a career in color, but I think at your emotional level, what kept you going? Because it is something that all the females go through every time, because there's this confusion, okay, whether to give time to family, whether to make career, whether to have a kind of a settlement in a profile so that I can manage, have a good work life balance. I think you must be going through all this at this time when there was no fixed kind of a structure that you had.
Yeah. So, Monica, I think, you mentioned a couple of words, and I would actually put it down to conviction.
Okay.
The fact that we had been invested in by our parents who treated us as equal, brother and sister, believed that we could do. So there's a conviction level from the parent. There's a conviction level from inside you that you truly believe that you've been trained well enough and that you can make a difference to an organization. And we were not treated dismissively. I was never treated dismissively. You were the sort of that exotic creature who was going to, people would be more scared of you than you were scared about them. And it was really about educating the client. It was constantly about, sharing what you can do. And I feel this conversation that you've had around women, uh, the pressure in this respect, because it was a newer profession happening between the 80s to the 90s in India, the men felt the same pressure. The guys leaving an IT or any design school that had begun to come up would have felt the same pressure.
Okay. Okay.
Women feel a constant pressure regardless. I tell people even today that if the socks of your husband or partner are not in the drawer in the morning, where they need to take them out, guys, it will in the end be your responsibility. Now, it may sound very non-feminist to say that, but I think if you can still do the things that are a privilege for your gender to do, I'm not saying socks is a privilege. I'm saying there are many privileges that come because you're a woman. Your success as a woman in a field that nobody has entered before gets noticed faster than if there were already 100 men there. So I really believe in this gender equality to this extent that I also feel that in a way, women have been really are privileged to be able to doing the kind of professions that they can.
Right.
And I do believe that as a part of that privilege, there's some things that you just have to do, and that's fine. Like, push comes to shove, I know if I want to sometime lay back and say, I'm going to take a 3-month break, the home fires will have to be kept running by one or the other partner, whoever decides to do that.
Absolutely.
Then you said something around, how do you manage this work-life balance? I just want to talk about a lot of people today who are also working what they call in the gig economy, young folks
Yes.
who believe they can flit from one idea to the next, and which is great and which is fine. All I do say, which I said to you at the beginning, that unless you've learned that industry or have spent 1,000 days working with a particular industry, it may be from within, it may be from outside, you really don't understand the ups and downs and the nuances that your client may go through, or that your understanding of doing your best work. So while 30, 40 years ago, what we did was in a way a gig economy because there was no fixed role for designers.
Absolutely.
I would say that the discipline, that conviction, and the second thing that kept me going personally has always been a discipline of, working hours or finishing something by the end of the day. And that's what, we would look forward to. And, that's what people who maybe today are working from outside of organizations may want to just consider.
Interesting. Quite interesting. So, what do you think has been your leadership style? Because every woman leader has a style. So, what is your leadership style?
Very poor. I don't think I've never thought about it because, in corporate life, there is always this concept about leadership style. I feel as designers, we are constant learners. And to me, can I learn from this? Can my team learn more from this? Can I do things differently? This actually becomes a very sticking and sore point for people who would rather do the routine every time. And so my leadership style, or the way I would think about anything is, yes, you know how to do this. You know how to do this well in a particular way. Do it that way. But can you be a maverick and also show another path? And then let's weigh the results. Because somewhere in questioning the done and dusted path, maybe some epiphany will happen, which will be amazing, not only for us as creators and thinkers, but also for a client or a person who's at the receiving end of the idea. The second thing on, leadership style, I actually learned very early on that you can't say things from top down. They'll never happen because it's then you'll actually weaken everybody down the line because they're having to follow what you've said, and maybe we've not heard enough of what they have to say. So I'll give you an example right now, and it sounds very strange to hear that somebody who's a creative designer or director of an organization is actually sitting at the warehouse and working right now. Because I believe that there is a lot of system organization and time and motion savings that can happen at a Freedom Tree home store warehouse. And for me, the most interesting part is to put teams of the actual worker on the ground, which is the carpenter, the packer, the shipper, put them along with their production heads, put them along with the design and directors together in different teams and have them come up with solutions for things that may be bothering us, or come up with solutions of how they can do their work better. And I tell everyone this, that the person on the ground who's doing that last mile of work never wants to do bad work. And you can take this to, Monica, when you and I met, you were working with this amazing Indian global pencil company. And you visited factories and you know how organized they are. And if that wasn't organized, your front end would suffer.
Absolutely.
So, and you know how amazing the worker who knows how the pencil is made and how much depth to dip it into, you learn from that.
Yes, absolutely. That's
but
true.
You could make his work easier because you have another global perspective.
Yes.
But they know the final mile, the final detail. They'll tell you why that quality check is failing because the stamping machine mein kuch ad gaya hai. So I think it's really, so for me, getting cross-functional people together and getting people up and down, whatever hierarchy, small organizations don't have that much hierarchy.
Right.
But to me, the absolute new ideas and innovation comes from that. So if anything, I don't know what style you would call it, but I would say just listening to that last mile delivery guy. Even if it's your tempo guy who's saying ये बहुत हिलेगा अगर इसको बांधोगे नहीं, you know, you you
Yes.
you can figure out a solution at the design desk only if you know where they are facing a problem.
Right. It's very interesting. We always discuss about voice of customer. Here you are talking about voice of last mile. I think that's incredible. It's a key takeaway. I think uh, being a good listener obviously makes sense, but giving equal importance to all the stakeholders in the last mile is equally important. I think interesting thing that you have kind of shared, and I think this will definitely inspire our women leaders to kind of uh, understand how subtle nuances really play an important role in shaping up your organization, shaping up your own journey.
So Monica, you said this very interestingly. The voice of the customer is never lost, right? You
Yes.
are in business
Yes.
or whatever you're doing, whether you're a writer,
Yes.
whether you're an artist, whether you're an engineer, whether you're a pencil maker, whether you're a home furniture designer, only because you're doing it for someone else.
Yes.
And while I shared with you an internal leadership, because leadership is about what you share, what you do internally.
Yes.
Now, when you mention the customer, it's about how you project yourself externally. And talking to everyone internally, here is another thing that happens. I think as a marketer, you're always focused on the customer. As a designer, we are social scientists who are always focused on the customer too. Or they call it the user and user interface design, but I call it people. People are no different from you and I. You and I are both the customers, right?
Absolutely.
And you remember when we were doing pencils, we would bring you examples from the fashion industry or what children were doing in sneakers, because all that is the influence. Your competition is not another similar category.
Absolutely.
It is whoever is taking the mind space of, for ease of a better word today, let's still call them the customer. And I found that internally, to get people aligned about how we have to deliver or create, whether it be the merchandise teams or marketing communication, I just have to say the one word to say, will this meet acceptance by the customer? Is that where your customer's head is today to receive the product or the information? And trust me, more than anything else that you might do as an organization, this binds people together better, and they get a focus and a trajectory that is more in sync and consistent.
I agree. Wonderful. It's been interesting to kind of hear this wonderful thoughts that you're sharing around customers, around internal customers. I think, this is so important. So tell me one thing, what do you think has changed in these like last 40 years since the time you completed your design and then you moved I think you traveled. If you could also share with us, you've traveled to different countries and you kind of shared with us one thing, that when your parents were kind of discussing on your career, what is the probable career that you should choose, there was this thing that, okay, what if I have to keep moving and fluctuating from one place to another place, and which you actually did, and how did you kind of evolve your journey? Like, what were the key things that kept you going, and how did you learn, unlearn? I know that you have been to different countries, and
Yeah.
You have been on different boards also. So if you could just touch upon that also, what were the challenges? What were the learnings that you had, and anything that you'd like to share as a takeaway for, all the
Yeah.
all
So,
the
Monica, there were two questions here. One was like, what has changed in the 40 years?
Yes.
The other question was, more related to, okay, how did I see and experience the change even
Yes.
through the travel?
Yes.
So, after that first decade where you know, I worked with people more differently, I then settled down to open a home store of my own called Takite Maluma, because we found that people weren't open to the idea and were not willing to take the risk with fresh and bold design and do, things that are like, when I said play the colorful, to be unpretentious with their homes were always designed for other people, never for the people living inside.
Hmm.
And then that's about around the time, and I did that after my return from England, where I found that a lot of the stuff, I mean, retail was just beautiful there, but a lot of the stuff that was being sold had also come from India, had been produced in India. So then that was a journey to find these production centers in the country. How it helped me, and this is something I feel that young people or women may face as, or yeah, may face as they need to move cities or locations, and especially overseas with their partners. In the time when I moved, that first 20 years that I moved around, in locations outside of the country, you actually were a non entity because you went on your husband's work permit or work
Hmm.
visa.
Right.
Some countries allowed you to work because of their relationship with India as a, so you then get snarled in this global diplomatic, economic exchange. The thing is that I just want people to be positive here. Your husband goes to work, the children go to school. You are left to figure out what to do with yourself if there is no sort of, if you've not gone. And so I would say spouse. It
Hmm.
happens to male spouses too
Hmm.
today.
Right.
And I would just tell them that don't moan, don't figure out that, oh, I'm in such a sorry state, I can't work here. I always tell people, start thinking after you settle in, after the first week, 10 days, month, however long it takes you, is think about what opportunities exist here, you being in Japan or you being in England or Singapore, wherever we were, and say, don't bemoan the fact that you can't work, but just think, what are the experiences can you absorb? Because you're here to live for a slightly longer time than a holiday visit.
Hmm.
And it completely changes your mindset. So, in being overseas, I was able to attend classes and go for drawing classes, go for computer learning. I was pregnant and I would still go in to learn something, because I said, this is a time where if I'm not working on my own, I can use it to upgrade skills and learn more about the environment that I'm. Whether it's a trip to see Japanese temples, no learning goes amiss.
I agree.
Even sitting somewhere and observing how people may be emptying a street and cleaning a street is a cultural learning. And there's no greater place to learn about community learning than Japan. So that was one of the biggest things that I learned there. Or to say, this is the strength of this country and location.
Hmm.
What can I learn here? So I learned how to make washi paper in Japan. I learned how to do something else when we were in England. I learned how to maybe do a small course in restoration if I was in another country where maybe art was important. All that went back in building sensitivity to the visual arts and design that I was really very interested in. Second part of your question, which you asked first, remind me again, the 20.
What has changed in these last 40 years?
Yeah. So I'll talk about that more from the perspective of India. Okay. I think in terms of my profession, the openness to design happened somewhere in the 90s, with this opening of the economy. People suddenly, goods came in, competitiveness came in, and then marketers had the need for differentiation. So there were
Absolutely.
global goods coming in, and Indian companies, which are amazing, felt the need, okay, now this has come to our doorstep. How do we step up? Uh, and I feel that to that end, design schools caught up, various organizations caught up, and there was that was a big, for me, a watershed moment. And the acceptance of design, like when I came back to India, and one incident only, and I can tell you this, in 2002, I could print cards that said color design consultant. And when I walked into an office and asked for a meeting, just looking up somebody in the yellow pages and saying, I want to meet the marketing head, they were open to listen to you. And you could walk in saying that you were a color. They were curious enough to want to know what you could do for them. And that doesn't happen unless they had open minds and were feeling a change. So for me, that's been, just speaking from the perspective of design, that was the seminal change around the change of the turn of the millennium. Because I only got back then. I'm sure so many people had done. And we were out for only a very short time, 4 to 5 years. But in that, you could see the openness
happen.
to
Right,
change.
right. Interesting. So have you ever faced any kind of a gender bias?
Monica, actually, no.
Okay, that's interesting.
Actually, no. It's really strange. And maybe in that very statement lies a gender bias. That people expect that designers will be women. So there's in their heads, it's a gender match. But I've not felt a gender bias. And I've even worked with organizations where traditionally there is a gender, there is an internal gender skew, only because those organizations traditionally came from what were considered commodity industries. So my first work back in India when I returned in 2002 was traditionally with the commodity industry, because I felt they were the ones who needed design and color intervention more. I wanted to work with corporates and not with design studios.
Right.
So automotive, paint companies, home commodities, tiles, sanitary ware. There was a gender skew in their organizations. There was no gender bias. They were so open to the fact that somebody could maybe tell them about how they could sell better to the consumer. And if anything, I would say that our work with them helped to readdress gender bias or gender skew within their organization. They suddenly found that it was important to hire women to deal with consumer and design issues. And remember, I've been seeing industry for 40 years. So whether it was the shampoo industry or whether it was, cosmetic industry, but now we are talking laminates, and now we are talking paint, and we are talking, your industry itself, where you came from, pencils and children's goods. It was the ability to say that we can hire more women because we need this consumer sensitivity. I would say there was a more gender integration rather than bias.
That's interesting. That's phenomenal. At least here we are discussing about gender skew, not gender bias. That's interesting side of the story. So what do you think has been your success mantra for managing a healthy work-life balance and succeeding in all your projects?
I have a terrible work-life balance. So, it's going to sound against everything that you want to make it sound correct. But the problem is, or I would say the cleverness is, that I really enjoy my work, Monica. To me, my what was considered a hobby by others became my profession. How can it be work-life balance? I tell people that sometimes I do Excel sheets to calm down. Okay. So because everything is in order and I can control things. To me, as a designer, an Excel is a sense of order.
Yes.
So by all new age standards, I have a terrible work-life balance. I can work and love working all the time because fortunately, or I mean, I love what I do.
Yes.
So uh, and if I can't work on the laptop or computer, which is what I find very tiring after a long day, I can draw, I can make notes. So for me, by all new age and millennial standards, I have a terrible work-life balance. But I absolutely love what I do.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to rain on your parade and question, but we have gone through. So I need to also say that I'm well above 60 right now. And these questions come up when you're a young mother and you're a young homemaker. So a lot of young people who face this, I would just tell them, even now, embrace what is traditionally your responsibility. Whether you're meant to cook and put food on the table and you're a working couple, if you embrace that, you can make it fun.
I agree.
Okay, you can say, okay, you can play with the children and say, okay, what color food should we make today? And you can involve the kids in that.
Yes.
But I think it's sometimes just easier to not fight it as much, but to make it fun.
Yeah.
So whatever is what is traditionally considered your responsibility, and we fight for gender equality. Yes, that exists for people who may really be facing very brutal challenges. I think we are all blessed, and I think we can. And as a young parent, as a young mother, I know if really my child was sick, I was the one who had to take the day off, and I really resented that. But you got to work around that, and maybe that's a period of a few years. And as a parent who wants to work, you make sure you bring up your kids to be super independent really fast. So there's no trick to that.
I know. I completely relate to this and I completely agree to this. I still remember those conversations that we used to have and those workshops that we used to have with the kids. And I think that was my own personal learning because when my daughter was pretty small and I wanted her to be independent, so I used to give her these things to, kind of work on and explore colors, as you said, as you rightly said, giving some ideas around how we should cook food. So I think this is very empowering. It's about how you look at life, half glass full or half glass empty, because that completely changes your perspective. Are you looking at your work as doership, or you are taking your work as a contribution in building a strong family, powerful family, value driven family? See, it's up to you to kind of look at and wear that lens. I think it's incredible the way you narrate it.
And we used to have this really silly joke. The kids would come in at 4:30, or 5 or 6 or something, and this one's taken my eraser, this one's done something. After 5, I'm not your mom anymore. Go and sort it for yourself. And they would get really shocked, that I was not taking on any responsibility as a mother. But I said, my job is done for the day. I'm sorry. So, and my kids always tell me it's a wonder we grew up normal in any way. But I think you can have fun with anything, Monica.
Yes.
Life's about just having fun with whether if you're not enjoying it, don't do it. Really.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
Right.
that's there for it.
Incredible. So, would you like to give any tip, any advice to the aspiring young women leaders?
So I only have this, I'm blessed that I do what I love. And I do believe that if you do what you really want to do, and a lot of people, you can meander and find it later. I mean, my family is shocked that I spend so much time on Excel. They said, "You're a designer. What you're doing on Excel?" To me, an Excel is very calming. It
Yes.
helps me to organize things.
Yes.
So I would just tell young women leaders who are amazing because they're in that place where they are, that you probably will go through phases in your life. There will be times when you are the girlfriend, you're the partner, which will have its own demands. You'll have children, you'll have a mother-in-law. I'm now, and every stage will have its demands, and it's fine. Your career will go through different stages where you may also want to dip out for a while. If you kind of enjoy what you're doing, you will you'll make sure that everything else fits in, because it's really important for you to get to work. Or if it's really important for you to be home and be the carer and nurturer and giver, please do that. So that there's no disharmony in your head about where you are today. Uh, that's the thing I would really tell people. If you need to cut back, then say that for these 4 years of my life, when the children need me, I'm going to only do alternate days, or I'm going to do 3 days, or I'm going to take a break from work and learn during that time to get, when I get back to work, I can develop a new skill. So just a gentle bit of planning and looking after yourself in that way. Um, and I do believe, maybe I'm old school, but I do believe women are very, very equipped with that sense of empathy that allows them to be leaders very differently. And when they're in an organization, I think they should take cognizance of that fact, and that's all about this. Yeah.
I think well said. I completely can relate to this. You know me, you know how passionate I was about my work and doing things and, you know, following tight deadlines. When I conceived, I remember having a conversation with you where you said, I think, Monica, you just need to pause it a little bit. I still remember you're looking drained. You can, you know, just pause it. And I think that was one such conversation which kind of gave me some cue to deciding this thing, what I need to actually do. So that's the time, yeah, focus on. And that's the time when I took a call that, okay, now I need to you know, take take a short sabbatical. And I took a short sabbatical. I you know, paused my career there, but then I used that time to do my higher study. I, you know, advanced marketing. I studied that, gave time to my daughter, and then again I started re-engineered myself and again started. So here, you know, I could very well relate to what you said. It's not about you know, those small pauses that you take. It's about how refreshing it is for you to
Yes.
take
Yes.
forward your journey.
So yeah, because your career is not who you work with. Your career is not a corporate graph, right? Your career is how you literally advance yourself. But at all stages, the only thing I would ask of anyone, whether a man or a woman, is that your sense of commitment to your work. I'm not even saying career, but the work you're doing that day, whether it's a factory worker, whether it's a gardener, whether it's us blessed people who are educated and are doing work, your sense of commitment and delivery should be honest.
Absolutely.
And that's it. Like, you've committed to doing 3 months of this stage or phase with somebody, deliver that perfectly, as well as you can, and know, without intentional mistakes. That's all. So yeah, so that's what I would.
Great. Thank you so much. We have come to the last part of our conversation. So we are going to have some rapid fire questions.
Yep.
Okay. So what, you have to give one word for it. Design.
Intention.
Work.
Oh, it's an elevation for me.
Elevation. Creativity.
Is all around.
Time.
Can expand.
Family.
Is so fun.
Interesting. Money.
Is there to be used.
Team.
In sync.
Freedom.
Responsibility.
Wow. Women.
And I'll give you an example. Every time, especially when working with your company, and I said this to your people, you all gave me, you would say, okay, you decide what path we should choose amongst the three options you've given. So with the freedom comes immense responsibility.
Absolutely. I agree. Women.
They're a crucible of strength.
Trend.
And I mean that also as women who, women colleagues, women you may meet professionally, women in the family up and down they really catch your back.
Okay. The last one. Trend.
It's a trajectory.
Interesting.
It's a direction. It's not the be all and end all. It's not do, must try, must die. It's a trajectory. So
thank you so much, Latika. It was lovely having you and having this, super interesting, candid, super fun conversation. We look forward to having many such conversations with you.
Thank you, Monica. It was a pleasure being on your channel.
Thanks.